Let's see. And we are live. I'm here today with Mr. Cone, Mr. Ice Cream Cone, Jonathan. Uh, he is very gracious to pop onto my very first, I guess my very first live stream ever. Um, and I'm so excited to talk with him about this book because he's such a treat to talk to when time comes up.
Well, thank
But
you.
uh, anyway, I got to plug your channel, obviously. Please follow Jonathan on Twitter or any other social medias you have. Please subscribe to his YouTube channel, support it if you have the cash, become members, all that jazz. All
Yes,
right, I've
and
got
if you like Star Wars books, I cover a lot of them. I also cover
also, he has
Lord of the Rings and
started.
stuff. But
He has started his first step into the wonderful world of manga, though he won't be doing it as often as books because you've got like what, one or two books a month going at the same time, maybe
so
three.
what I do is I read 10 to 15 books a month, somewhere in there. I mean, January was
Okay,
19. That was crazy.
I was way off then.
But I do some fantasy, some sci-fi, some thrillers, some horror, some historical fiction,
Yeah,
some
yeah.
Star Wars. So it's because of
You
that
branch out.
I branch out, so I can only not afford, like, from a money standpoint, but from a time standpoint, I can only afford to put one time slot in for manga. So I can't do it as
Makes
often
sense,
as I would
yeah.
like.
Anyway, I'm going to mute the cam just for a sec, just so I can make us live on Twitter.
Gotcha.
Be right back. Alrighty. Gotta share it with the 50,000 group chats I'm in.
Gonna start the Jeopardy theme while we do that. Do 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 do.
And we are love.
All right, so Airplane.
I really despise my autocorrect sometimes because it just gives me the wrong words.
So airplane food, right? Everybody hates that. Oh, not going to do that, I guess.
What do you think of this airplane food? You know.
Hello, Theodore. Hello, Revan.
Oh.
We have comments. I'll read them for us. Theodore says, "What's up, Jonathan? Great to see you." Revan says, "So exciting, Nazo. I'm planning on rereading NJO later this year, or reading this year for the first time since it came out." Wow. Well, that'd be a long time, you know. That'd be a long time. Iron Inquisitor, hello, good evening, good to see you. It's so your original read would have been in like 2000 or 1999 to 2002, 2003. My original read through started in 2017 in May, and it went until I think August of 2018. So I think mine was like a little over a year. But it's been, a while for me as well. So I have not read it in quite a while, but I have notes and things to remember from it.
All right, I shared with every group chat I have on Twitter. So yeah, there we go. All right, yeah, let me see the comments. Let me see if I can check these out. All right. Oh, Marcel. Hey, buddy. Hey, if you want, I'll send you a thing if you want to come on. Yeah, Revan Kist is my buddy Marcel. He was actually one of the people on the Legends Con 2 thing while that was still going. I was sorry to hear that didn't work out. Anyway, yeah, if you guys want to come on, just let me know in the comments, and I will send you a link to join us on the stream. But yeah, we are talking about Vector Prime. I have my hardcover right here.
Mine is packed away, so I can't reach it right now.
That's okay. But yeah, I was excited for most of the EU books I went through, but people built this series up to me, so yep. I was super excited to start it, and the start of it did not disappoint, not even a little. I was hooked from the start, just like, oh wow, this is good, and it kind of makes me sad that R.A. Salvatore, other than like the episode 2 book, did not get any more books in the expanded universe, because I feel like he could have done a lot more.
I don't believe that I don't think it's because he wasn't offered them. I think it's because he chose not to really do money. If I could talk about some of the business stuff about this, I'm going to plug Full of Sith did a podcast called Why We Killed Chewie. And it's where R.A. Salvatore and Mike Stackpole talk with the Full of Sith host Brian Young at a convention, and they do a whole panel on the production of the New Jedi Order at the beginning of it, and talk about how it started. And Salvatore just talks about just what a horrific experience it was doing doing Vector Prime.
I heard he lost his brother around that time too.
He did, and the fan mail was just awful. They were so hateful and angry.
I'm not even surprised, because that's all I've heard is horror stories of like, and I'm like, come on. From what I heard from when I went to Legends Con back in 2023, I think it was either, I can't remember if it was Matthew Stover or Michael Stackpole that said, but like, he said that Salvatore was like, you guys know everybody's going to hate me for this, right?
Yep. And it was also kind of interesting that he didn't really want to do another Star Wars book after that, but George offered him episode 2, and Terry Brooks called him and said, "Are you nuts?" Said, "You have to take it. You have to do it," because Terry had just done episode 1, and so he was like, "You have to do this." And George specifically chose both of them because he was trying to bring people who had written in other genres at the time to come to write for Star Wars. So that's why he did, Shannara for Brooks, and then Drist for Salvatore, although he's done a bunch of other things as well.
Yeah. I haven't read any of the Drist books. I'll see if there's any high seas downloads. I'll just kidding. But
no,
Jonathan is cringing right now.
I am very against piracy in all its standards. But I will say that the Drist books, I've read the first 6, and the first 3 in particular are really good. So I highly recommend those.
Marcel said he watched your Dune House of Carreno review the other day. He enjoyed your content. Cool to see you here as well.
Oh, thank you, Evan. Great to see you here.
I met Marcel at Legends Con. He is such a nice dude. He I talked with him in line for like a couple of minutes, and he loved talking to my dad too, because my dad took me there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my buddy CT is here. Hey, buddy. And there's my other buddy Netcat. Netcat is the one that got me a lot of the EU ebooks.
Mm-hmm.
Such a gentleman. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And yeah, so it's just nice to see people here. I know it's my first stream, and I feel like I guilted people into stopping by, but it's really nice that some of you guys popped in just to say hi, just to see how this is going to go.
One of the other things, real quick, about the behind the scenes production was Stackpole was supposed to do 3 books after Salvatore, but because it was 3 books, he started really early on the process, and so he was already deep into his stuff. I mean, he knew where Salvatore's was kind of going, and so afterwards, Salvatore was like, "Why didn't you give me the sequels and you do book 1?" And because he believed, and I actually agree, if Stackpole had killed Chewie, spoilers, I think everybody knows that. If Stackpole had done the deed, people wouldn't have reacted that way, because he.
By the way, this is going to be a very spoilery stream, so if you have not yet read NJO, you got to get on that.
Right. But he was like, if Stackpole had done it, the fandom probably would have trusted him. And so in hindsight, I think it would have been smarter to have Stackpole do Vector Prime and have Salvatore.
No, I actually agree, because I feel like, because remember, Stackpole and Zahn were like real buddy back then.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure they are still very buddy.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm pretty sure that if Stackpole had done it, because he had respect from the fandom for his X-Wing books and how well he worked together with Zahn, that Zahn would have shielded him from some of the criticisms. Like, no, I think it was a bold choice. I think he did the right thing. yeah, it probably would not have blown up as badly because I feel like Michael would get a little more grace because Salvatore, at least among Star Wars fans, no offense, he's an amazing writer, is kind of a nobody.
Right?
At least,
Yeah, he was. And it's funny because Salvatore was not in the I'm going to call it a story group. That's not what it was called, but like they got a story team of authors, editors, and people at Lucasfilm who were making the choices. Salvatore was not in the room when they decided to kill Chewie. He was just
I know that
the hatchet man.
It was Mr. Stradley. It was Mr. Stradley, by the way.
It was Stackpole, Stradley, Lucino, and
he was there.
Shelley Shapiro, and I want to say
wasn't Lucy Wilson with
Lucy Wilson was there as well.
Lucy Wilson.
Yeah. So it was all of them that were in the room, and so it's not. If you're still blaming Salvatore, he was just the hitman. He was not the one that made the decision.
He's the man that took the hit, and honestly, props to him. Because I enjoyed the heck out of his book, and believe it or not, when the big moment came, the big spoiler that we'll talk about in a bit, I stopped listening for a minute, and I was at work at the time, and I just I put my head against the wall and kind of banged my fist softly, and again, I'm not even the biggest Chewbacca fan. I'm more of a fan of Han and his kids, but I felt it. The way, and again, I knew the moment was coming, but I felt it.
Yeah.
How that you ever understand how strong writing has to be if you feel it, if you feel the character loss. I hadn't felt a character loss that big since Ton Fanon in the X-Wing books.
Yeah.
That was the only other loss that that really hit me. And it wasn't just the loss; it was the that final heartfelt message at the end that his friend had to read. Face. But let me get started on some of the moments I liked about the book. Give me 1 second. Just gotta look at my notes. Okay. So the first thing I want to get to is it kind of starts at the very beginning of the book, but the bond that Mara and Jaina has and Leia's jealousy over it.
Mm-hmm.
I understood everything fully. Like Mara, she's fighting that Vong spore illness. Spoilers, by the way, this is going to be huge spoilers. She's fighting that Vong spore illness, and she has more faith in Jaina than Leia seems to. And I get it because Leia's her mom. She's going to worry about her kid a little more, and Mara's her cool aunt that's going to be like, nah, she can joyride. She's got it. That was a really good moment. Like it stretched out throughout multiple chapters too. Just and you could feel Leia's jealousy. She's like, I wish I had this relationship with my daughter, but at the same time, she knows that she can't be that person because it was hard for her to struggle with that jealousy. I know it's been a while, so you're probably starting to remember a little bit of what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was really good. I thought that was really good, and it wasn't all just animosity towards Mara over it. It was like she knew about Mara's disease, obviously, and she thought of the concept of her not being around to have kids, and it was just going to be her and Jaina, talking about years down the line when Jaina has her kids, oh yeah, Aunt Mara couldn't be here because of the illness, and that stuff. It didn't hit me hard, but it did hit me a little.
Yeah, we talked about this before the stream started. I'm going to be providing a lot of contrarian perspectives on this book. And so, Revan Kist, I'm going to bring up what you just put in the chat. Yes, I did not love the Mara stuff in this book because it was very jarring. To go from all the pre-NJO Mara stuff, and then at the very beginning of this book, she has that disease stuff going on. Her personality is just different. The Banamera books, they all kind of had a feel for how to write Mara, but I felt like as soon as she was married to Luke, there was kind of a shift, and they were like, all right, she's no longer the rogue character.
Yeah,
And so,
I do kind of see what you're talking about because, and I actually thought like, and the reason why I thought it was stronger, this is the only reason I thought it was stronger, is that when you're faced with like the inevitability of your death, sometimes you don't just like turn into a goody goody.
mhm,
Sometimes you retreat into some of your old behavior
right.
because Mara had changed. Most of the Bantam era, she was very aggressive and
Yeah.
hard nosed and
Mhm.
very sure of herself. And then after she married Luke, she was a bit lighter and kinder. And I won't discuss it, but I have seen a little bit of that in Dark Tide. Uh,
Yeah.
but like I kind of see that as her like sort of transitional phase where she's like she hasn't fully accepted that she's going to die,
Mhm.
and so she's kind of retreating into some of her old behavior. She's like, no, this is my fight, this is my thing. Don't don't interfere, give me
And I
space.
and I think that the that difference in her character, how just starting the book, just like kind of a jolt so different than we left her previously, did not help ingratiate audiences with decisions that happen later in the book.
Mm.
Because a lot of audiences went into this new series because remember, it wasn't just a new author, it wasn't just a new series, it was also a new publisher.
Yeah,
Bantam
Del Rey.
had sold the rights, and Del Rey had gotten them, and so now, it's everything's new. Author,
Plus, yeah,
series,
plus
publisher.
everybody had not everybody had read the Bantam books, or they had only read a
Right.
few,
So
and
when they
they're
so when they
yeah.
got to this point, that makes it jarring. And perhaps if and maybe this was a Salvatore thing, maybe this was just at the time, or maybe it's anyone else would have had this problem. So I'm not necessarily blaming Salvatore himself, but
Yeah.
maybe if they had just handled Mara's stuff a little bit differently, and also I would also add in Jason, which I'm sure we'll get talk to him about him in a minute as well.
We
But
we
if
are going to talk
Jason,
about him.
yeah, if Mara's and Jason's stories in particular had been tweaked, I think that the Chewie stuff, that alone would have made the Chewie stuff feel less jarring and made people less angry.
Probably, yeah. And
Um,
keep in mind, I think Salvatore was just going off of what he, because I'm not sure if he read, because I've read the comic book that Stackpole did, the marriage one.
Union.
It's yeah, Union. It's sorry, its name was escaping me at that moment. So
Mhm.
I don't think he had read. Maybe he hadn't read that because the last time you leave off Mara, she's still kind of abrasive, and we didn't get Survivor's Quest until a little later down the
Later.
line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, I do see what you're talking about. At the same time, though, I also have to kind of come to the and again, I'm one of those people. You know me. I'm one of those people that calls out people like Corn Horn and Mara Jade when I think they're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I kind of have to play defense to her because I'm like, she's in pain and she's retreating into her old ways a little bit because she at times sometimes you forget that you have people who care about you. Luke is probably terrified, and he wants to
Mm-hmm.
help her any way she can, or any way he can, um, with this problem. But she's like, "No, don't you go thinking I'm weak." Which, no offense, and I think Mara even accepts it once we get. I'll talk about it once we get to the duel with Yeoman Carr.
Mm-hmm.
But once she accepts, I think after the duel with Yeoman Carr, she actually kind of accepts it, like she accepts that I'm weaker. I'm not as strong as I used to be. It is partially because she's feeling the disease connected to the Vong spores and the way the atmosphere of the planet is on Belkadon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like it feels like she's kind of starting to accept, hey, maybe I shouldn't revert back to my old ways. Maybe I should let Luke in. Maybe I should be a bit more open about this. Talk to Leia, talk to Jaina, talk to
And I will
So
say that is a
yeah,
lot of the problems that I had with Mara in this book are eventually solved later on in this series. So it's like, it all. I'm happy with where it ends up. I'm just like, maybe if it was just tweaked a little bit, could have ended up a little better.
yeah. Okay. This brings me to my next thing. When talking about Leia and that first part when they're going to see Nama Noor. Sorry, I just had to check my notes.
Mm-hmm.
Worth Skitter.
Mm-hmm.
What a problem child. yeah, he initially when I see him helping, my first thought is, oh, a Jedi came to their rescue. But then when I see Leia reprimand him because of that, I begin to understand. I'm like, oh, that's right. She wanted to do this without casualties, and he caused a casualty because he wanted to mark another X on his X-wing or something like.
Right.
And yeah.
It's an interesting theme because this is a theme that that the Last Jedi attempted to tackle with Oscar Isaac's character of Poe Dameron, where
the
he
hot
was
head.
wanting, he was trying to say, hey, look, we have this opportunity, take out this ship, and Leia's saying, look, you're causing deaths here. So both the book, Vector Prime and Last Jedi are dealing with that theme. I think the problem is that it doesn't work out the way it's supposed to, because we, as the audience, were supposed to like Poe Dameron. I didn't feel, and I'm blanking on this character's name from the book that you're talking about. Can you say it again?
Skitter.
Yeah, Skitter. I didn't get. I remember the character. I just don't remember his name. I didn't feel like we were quite as connected, or that we were as positive towards him. And so because of that, the kind of the reprimand from Leia works better in the book than it does in the movie.
Well, to be fair, he's really supposed to be the reason they introduce him, at least how I felt, he's really supposed to be the symptom of the bigger problem that's going on in the Jedi right now.
Yeah.
Which is the difference between thinking and planning of action versus actual action, whether or not it's been planned out or not. And where Skitter is the example, and obviously Kip Duran. I was a huge Kip Duran defender. I still am, at least when it comes to the whole Jedi Academy trilogy. But in this instance, he's causing more harm than good, because he's making people like Worth Skitter, who already probably has a little bit of ego on him already, even more egotistical and like. Now here's the thing: I don't think they're like, let's go straight to the dark side egotistical. I mean, like, let's do dangerous actions without major consequences, or think that there's no major consequences. And I do agree. I think Leia was right to call him out, because he's like, you need to think before you act. Revan 1207. How do you fellas know? Oh, it's Caleb. Oh, hey, Caleb. What's up, man? Pop in, say hi. Thanks for popping in, man. It's good to see you. And again, like, I'm not trying to crap on Worth Skitter, because I'm sure that he's got his fans. I'm sure he's a good character. And he'll probably grow, at least I hope he'll grow into a better character. But the way he is now, he's literally the book's point of view of a prop of what's wrong when this philosophy goes a little too far. Because I think in some degrees, and I might as well just skip ahead to the debate. Hang on, give me 1 second. I want to check my notes to make sure I got this properly. All right. So we'll do the Jedi debate and the Coruscant Council and Borsk Thalia, my favorite topic.
I love this is a hot take. I hate Borsk Thalia, but I also love Borsk Thalia because
I love him as a foil. I love him. He knows how to play the political game just right. Go ahead.
And there's also some historical thematics to him as well, because Borsk Thalia really reminds me of Neville Chamberlain in World War II. So in the lead up to World War II, we are worried about what's happening with the Nazis. We are worried about what's happening with Russia and the communists. And Neville Chamberlain, who was at the time the Prime Minister of England, was kind of he was kind of appeasing everything, and he was like, it's not really a problem, it's not something that we need to be worried about. He would like give speeches at times saying, oh yeah, we hate the Nazis, oh yeah, we hate the communists, but like behind the scenes he wasn't actually trying to stop anything. He was kind of let stuff happen.
Yeah, the comment, my buddy Netcat said, "I love to hate Borsk." I'm in agreement with you there.
Right.
But yeah,
And
yeah.
And so Neville Chamberlain, is partially responsible. And you have to think, if, say, Winston Churchill had stepped in earlier as prime minister, could World War II have been averted? Could World War II have had fewer casualties? You have to wonder that. And the same thing happens with Borsk. Borsk handles this situation in this book and in the subsequent ones completely wrong. And you have to wonder if someone else, a better political leader, whether it's Leia, whether it's someone else, could the major problems with the Vong and the 19-book series been averted. Now we need the problems with the Vong because we need a 19-book series. But you have to wonder if Borsk had either done the right thing or if someone else had taken his job. Maybe what could have happened.
Yeah, that is a possibility. And when it comes to Borsk-Valia, like I was listening to that scene intently, and I could tell he was thinking of sides to pick.
Mm-hmm.
Like he the whole reason he was silent, he was letting his allies there. You had that Mon Cala guy, I forgot his name, or he's not Mon Cala, he's Quarren. And then you had the Sullustan for some reason that's against the Jedi, which I don't get that. And then another senator from another planet, I forgot who they. And then you had the Corellian senator who was being quiet, just like Borsk, and then Cal Omas and the Wookiee senator who were straight up in Luke's defense. Like
it is very much a trope to have the Sulustans anti-Jedi and to have the Wookiees staunchly pro-Jedi. That is the case not just in the New Jedi Order, but like any series, like Legacy or otherwise. That's just like, I feel like they were like, we need to have a Jedi supporter. Let's make it a Wookiee. Or, we need someone to oppose the Jedi. I've been
going through a New Dawn, and Seluna seem to be very pro-Jedi.
Yes, that's a
bit subversion. Yeah, different book, but I'm almost finished with that one anyway. But
I love New Dawn.
Yeah, but okay, so back to this.
Right.
Yeah, so I enjoyed the debate, and I thought Luke just handled the situation perfectly with that debate because he just let them go to town, and then he walked out. He's like, okay, these guys aren't ready to talk about my issue, so I'll come back when they are.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's talking about reestablishing the Jedi Council so that they can start reining some of the Jedi in because of people like Kip Duran and Ganna Rysode and Worth Skitter who are like, we need to act against piracy and whatnot. But yeah.
It's kind of interesting, the theme that kind of you start to see as you get further away from the Bantam era and as you go in through the Del Rey is you see Luke take on very much an administrator role. He is no longer always on the front lines. I mean, sometimes in this book he's in the front lines, but like he's no longer always the one who's always on the front lines. Oftentimes he's stepping back and he's having to do the political thing, or he's having to rein in the Jedi and stuff. And this is what happens when you have such a large organization. Back when it's just him and Kip and maybe a few other, like 12 other people, I think is how many were in the Jedi Academy trilogy and iJedi.
There was more than 12, but I do see where you're getting at.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of implied characters, and that's why Kevin left a lot of them ambiguous because this was this and this was that.
But like what that has to happen. And in another Star Wars book that's in the canon, there's a whole discussion about how the Jedi Council does not get in touch with like the living force and stuff, and so they're not involved in the weeds of Jedi affairs. They're always sitting in their council meetings.
Is this Master and Apprentice?
No. This is
okay.
The Living Force, and they're always talking about how they're always up in the council chambers, just doing the administrative stuff. And you have to realize the larger your organization gets, the harder it is to be involved in the nitty gritty. Like I'll use my father for example. He just went from working at a 800 student school to a 100 student school. And so because of that, the organization is much smaller. So now he can be in the nitty gritty. He can teach classes. He can be with the kids all day.
Yeah, it's a lot easier for him to handle now.
Right. And before he had 900 students, he had like 100 staff members. He couldn't see them all often. He could barely see his leadership team all the time. And so like Luke, it's understandable that he is taking such an administrative role in this book.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I've been seeing. Like, I like the idea of him reestablishing the Jedi Council because, again, there's this fundamental debate going on, and I know you don't agree with it, but I kind of agree with Jason that you need to think before you act, because I've seen examples of people not thinking before they act and the consequences of that. And by that, I mean, I'm talking about the Knights of the Old Republic series, both the comic and the games, in which Revan leads a bunch of Jedi to war, and surprise, surprise, they all ended up on the dark side. So there
Um,
is, yeah.
is this an opening to talk about Jason for a moment then?
Yes, please.
Okay, so with Jason, I'm not opposed to his arguments in the book necessarily, because I think some
Same,
of his
yeah.
arguments have merit. My problem is, so someone asked earlier in the chat about have we read Young Jedi Knights?
Yeah,
Jason
Young
has
Jedi Knights, yeah.
in Young Jedi Knights, Jason has a very particular humor style. He has a very particular personality, and there is a lot of people got to know Jason from those books, including me. That was my first Star Wars books, was
Same,
the
yeah.
Young Jedi Knights. And so when I think of Jason, I'm thinking of that lovable goofball who is making puns to make Tenel Ka roll her eyes.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and so now, yes, he's older here. He's much more of a teenager, but
But you're
there is
wondering where his jokes are.
where not just his jokes, but that free-loving personality. He's rude to Anakin in this book. He's
Yeah, I
mean-spirited at
noticed.
times. He's and again, Salvatore's trying to write him as a teenager, so I get it. But it's such a, again, it's like Mara having such whiplash going from where she was before
Yeah,
to
yeah,
this.
it is. I did kind of get that, but I kind of tossed it up, at least in this regard, to the tension of the times.
Oh yeah, it is. But like, really,
Because
the
even
tensions haven't
Anakin
really.
feels different from how he was in Junior Jedi Knights.
He does, but to me, the big problem is with Jason, because you have such an innocent character that we've connected with, and now you've turned him into someone that the audience just naturally just doesn't really like as much. Like, Jason starts from this point in this book to no longer being the fan favorite of the Solo kids, and it starts to turn. I mean, Jaina has always kind of been that way, but also I
Yeah,
would say Anakin really. This is the book where people started to say, "Hey, Anakin's my favorite of the Solo kids," and it's fine to make him the favorite, but it sours. This is the problem people have with the sequel trilogy: is it sours you on this character that you've loved for so long, and when you do that with Mara, again, a book original character, and then
yeah,
you do that with Jason, a book original character, and so the audience is feeling kind of bitter to you as an author or
yeah.
publisher or whatever.
They're feeling whiplash, and then you
Right.
follow it up with the death of Chewie, and
Yes.
it's even bigger whiplash.
And this is my general point is, maybe they were thinking, hey, if we do this stuff at the beginning, we will prepare you for something crazy at the end. But I think it had the opposite effect, where it made people just bitter, and so it made it's as the Bible would say, it hardened their hearts.
Yeah, that's a good example. Or made them stiff-necked people.
Correct. Yes, it's so like it's one of those, you kind of invited this a little bit,
Yeah.
and so I think
Well,
that it
again,
should have been handled better.
I do see your point, but at the same time, I'm like, this has got to be a product of the time. Like, I imagine, like, for a 16-year-old, he's got to be under a lot of stress, because he is Luke's direct Padawan. At
Right.
least in this particular, he is Luke's Padawan. So he sees now, unlike when he was a goofball, he sees
Mhm.
now just exactly what type of pressure Luke is under, what he could lose, how hard things are. And Luke, I feel like Luke is like really in character in this book, because he's just, other than the danger moments, he's
Yeah.
just smiling through most of this,
Yeah.
because he's,
Luke was one of the characters that was like perfectly handled. Like, I don't have a problem with how Luke was handled. He was handled right.
yeah. So, but I do agree that the dynamic between the two different sects of Jedi, the ones who want to take fierce actions and the ones that want to, let's think about this for a minute, is a
Mhm.
really good dynamic in the book.
Mhm.
And I'll talk about I'll talk about how that dynamic kind of came to a head in one of my other points. But hang on, I gotta check another point again, because I have notes. Well, okay, all right. So, I'll skip Nominor for now, but we'll talk about the stuff on Lando's Folly, because whenever Lando's involved, I just got to think of Hondo Onaka. I smell profits.
Yep, that's accurate. That is accurate.
Yeah. So that's the kind of vibe I get off Lando. Lando's Folly, that whole sort of sport, and the kids going through it, and how they all like. I know Jaina went the furthest, and Leia was freaking out the whole time.
That sequence was the closest that the book got to feeling like a Young Jedi Knights book. That's the closest it got.
But that's, to be honest with you, that's not the sequence that, like, I enjoyed that sequence, but that's not the sequence that made me laugh. Are you ready for it?
Okay. Yeah.
So somebody suggests that Han and Chewie do that whole bounce along, because most of them are in TIE Advance, all the kids.
Mm-hmm.
But in a TIE bomber, the two of them together, and Chewie's cramped in, and Han's like, okay, let's see if we can do this. And from the outsider's perspective, his kids' jaws are on the floor because of the way the way. Okay, my buddy just says, hi Nazo, is Jonathan Cohen friendly to some Disney Star Wars? Yes, he is. He is one in a sense because he reads the books. Jaina's always been my favorite.
I have read all the canon books, and I'm almost done with Legends. I'm getting so close. I'll be done by the end of the year.
Well, you're going to do the young readers, so you're not entirely done.
Okay, with all the adult books.
Okay, done with it. Yeah, yes. But yeah, like the way the TIE Fighter's going, like the kids are like, "Wow, that maneuver was just so perfectly handled and planned." Meanwhile, inside the TIE bomber, Han,
Yes,
that just had me laughing. That him and Chewie are freaking out throughout the whole thing. They're like,
I can see how they would frame that in a movie. Like you just like cut to them.
Yes,
cut back to the kids.
One of the best instances, though, the thing that made me laugh the most out of it was that Lando's contacting him, says, "Hey, your kids are like, they're impressed at what they're seeing." And Han and Chewie stop yelling. Han answers and goes, "Yeah, well, what do you expect? We're like the best in this." And then he turns off the comm, goes back to screaming in terror. Yep. It was just amazing, like just so fun. I'm like it felt like a harkening back a little bit to like Han and Chewie's like somewhat early days in those old books. Mm-hmm. That like they're clearly in over their heads in certain situations and just completely lucking out by the fact that.
In that panel I referenced earlier, the Why We Killed Chewie, Salvatore did specifically talk about how he wanted to give Han and Chewie like a one last fun adventure real quick, kind of before the major death, which that was a smart move on his part. That helped soften the blow a little
bit. But and I told like the second I got off work, I had to tell my dad about it. I told him just in detail, like how they're freaking out. And then they go out, and then Luke goes out, and he takes the X-wing, or not X-wing, but the TIE fighter he had with no shields, just completely dodging skillfully. And then he finds that they somehow landed on an asteroid, and they're arguing inside the cockpit. And then they notice Luke, and then Chewie howls, and then Han grabs his ears and Sorry, it's moments like that I just can't help but laugh. And then when they bring Han back, he's like wrapped in like a blanket or towel, and he's like, "That ship you sent to pick us up hit every asteroid on the way here." It was just that entire sequence was just so fun. Like, and the weird thing is, it felt natural to the story. It didn't. Like it was built up. They're like, oh yeah, Han, and let's see how skilled they are, And then it just turns into this crazy funny sequence, which also had a little drama because Luke went out there, and I like that Lando decided, like, well, you're still a few seconds behind these guys, but since you kind of fell out of the field, I'm gonna shave off some of the time. So he gave them the score, and the Han's like, yeah, you better shave it.
Right.
All right, and then so obviously one of the coolest aspects, and it kind of sets it up too, was that Jaina got the highest score, which is no surprise considering she's the best pilot out of the bunch of them.
Oh, absolutely.
And then then we got introduced to Kip Duran. I'm like, oh, I was happy to see Kip Duran, but at the same time, like I can, and it's kind of being explained in Dark Tide why he is the way he is, which I won't spoil that right now. I'll talk about it another time.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like Stackpole really learned from his previous thoughts of Kip Duran.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like he's a bit more respectful to the character in a way. But I'll talk to that when we do Dark Tide. But
well, also I think that I think it wasn't just the him; it was just the characters in the universe. You know, right at the time that the Jedi Academy trilogy is happening in universe, everybody except for maybe Luke is distrustful of Kip Duran. They're kind of resentful in a way, and
well,
I
not
believe
Han. Not Han, but
yeah, no,
even
but
after what happened.
most of the galaxy is not particularly happy with Kip, and I think there are some lines. I believe maybe it was from Han, but I think it was from Luke, where he's basically like, "Look, it's going to take people a long time to kind of warm up to you," and that's basically what happens. Is it does take it does.
I warmed
take
up
some
to
time.
him right away. I saw
You
it for
did.
what it
I know.
was.
In universe, I'm saying, not from the audience. In universe, it took a lot of people to warm up, so it makes sense that Stackpole would kind of wait during the time that he's writing Jedi. His characters aren't necessarily warming up to Kip Duran, but once he gets past that, once he gets to this point where it's been about a decade since then, then it makes sense that they've all warmed up to him finally.
Oh yeah, and that's something I want to talk about when it comes to Corran Horn, when it comes to Dark Tide, because I want to talk about how much he has grown up.
Yep.
And I mean grown up from how he was, because I did not like him at all. At least I started to like him, but I did not like him at all by the end of Jedi. That doesn't mean I hate the character. It's just like, I'm calling you out for this. That's all. But hang on, let me see my next point. Give me 2 seconds. We talked about Lando's Folly, Kip Duran a little bit. Do you want to talk about Nominor, or do you want to talk about the noble sacrifice?
So for the, I'll be honest, I don't remember what specifically happens with Nominor in this book because he's in so many books. So I'm trying
okay. So
refresh my memory.
In this instance, I forgot the name of the planets, but these two planets are warring, and he's 2 seconds too much. Thanks, Netcat. But in this instance, he's like on the side of the miners that are like, they feel like they're being mistreated by the rich, and he's starting the usual Red Knight anti-machinist thing because it's part of his culture. He's among the heretics. And to be honest with you, as far as a villain, I liked him instantly.
Yeah.
Because of the way Salvatore wrote him. But Salvatore was not my introduction to the character.
Was it a comic originally?
It was a comic. Crimson Empire 2 is where he's introduced. And he is pulling strings in Crimson Empire 2 of how he's kind of subverting the Empire a little bit and kind of tearing it up from the inside. So I already kind of knew about this guy. And then I just went through the short story Boba Fett, A Practical Man. So I got a little bit more insight. But I thought he was a very clever villain, the way he faked his death in the book. Because he sends like a missile ship and he makes it look like, oh, I'm coming to the New Republic because I need your aid, despite the fact that I was incredibly rude to Leia, because he's planning, he's scheming, fakes death. And he's like, now to go sow chaos somewhere else so the invasion can proceed. And that's something I want to talk about is the Yuzhan Vong in general. Just, I know not everybody's behind the idea, but I really like. My mom wasn't a big fan of it because she likened it to the Borg. And in a sense, I kind of see it. Where it's like,
it's the reverse
we assimilate
Borg.
you. Yeah. It is kind of the first Borg.
Sort of. I mean, reverse, like.
Reverse Borg, completely anti-machine.
Right,
but
because we already had the Borg a little bit in Truce
TNG and yeah.
Yeah.
We also had a variant of it in Dark Empire, but that's a different aspect altogether. Like Palpatine would put pilots' brains inside these droid fighters, basically. So it was kind of a similar thing to Truce of Bakura, just not exactly the same.
Yeah. And
Excuse me.
the whole Vong idea of their being so focused on biologic as opposed to technological was a smart idea from the creators of the series because
Yeah,
it makes them feel other universally, because we
yeah,
hadn't
and that's the
exactly
vibe they were
had
going
that.
for.
Yeah, because we had the technological only with droids. We had the kind of the technological human blend, but we hadn't necessarily had like a pure like society that is anti technology, and that a society that had created technology as flesh, as
Living
creatures,
organic tissue
living organic
creatures.
tissue. Yeah, and
Because their
so
armor is alive, their weapons are alive, their
I don't
ships are
know.
alive.
I don't know any other science fiction series that has been quite that bold with that sense.
I like it.
So
I
yeah, it works really
genuinely like
well.
it.
Yeah.
And the reason why I like it is because beyond the fact that they're so intimidating looking, just by the way they look, from what I've seen of the artwork and as well as the tie-in comics that I recently reread, um, they are terrifying. Like, I don't know if you ever heard of the movie Apocalypse Now, based on Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness book.
No, I
But
haven't.
one of the things he talks about that is horror, like what true horror means, and they feel like true horror because they can be anybody in that galaxy. You have no idea where they are because their ships look like asteroids.
Hmm.
Um, when you Jedi can't sense them in the Force, so they're So you have to rely fully on skills. Blaster bolts don't work on their armor. They
Hmm.
spit venom at you, and if it touches any portion of your skin or gets in through a cut, you're as good as dead.
Hmm.
And that not only that, they're hulkingly strong because they've got like the muscular body underneath their disguises and everything. It's just straight up horror
Hmm.
in like the truest. It's not horror in the sense like a horror movie like Red Harvest or something like that, or Death Troopers. It's straight up genuine. Oh, Alex here. I'd have joined, but I'm an hour of sleep. Cool, you got Jonathan through. He's wonderful. Oh yeah,
Oh,
this is
thank
my
you.
buddy Alex. Uh, but yeah, like they are straight up terrifying
Hmm.
when you really think about it, and the fact that they imply that the Praetorite Vong were just the advanced force and coordinated by one Yamosk, that
Yep.
big tentacle monster with the huge tooth that was basically just the Kraken from what was it, Pirates of the Caribbean
Hmm.
movies,
Yep.
but just absolute creepy horror that like makes your skin crawl just a little bit because all they have to do is, and their obsession with pain and death. Like, okay, so these guys, these guys are crazy religious zealots because if you kill them, they'll be like, "Yay, I died an honorable death," and that's
Right.
actually scary because like it's like if you took like the Nords or something like that, or like the Mongols, and took them to like the exact religious extreme, and it's just
Yep.
absolutely terrifying to witness. Even if I'm just using my imagination, if I'm not physically seeing, and that's one thing I have to. That's one thing a positive thing, because when I reread the Invasion comics, I'm like, these are awful. I remember them being awful, and they're just as awful now, if not before. Uh,
Hmm.
but they perfectly illustrate. Let's say you don't have a good imagination ability, they perfectly illustrate what everything looks like.
Hmm.
The art style works well with the way the Vong look, how they still have their creepy kind of twisted skeleton faces with piercings,
Yep.
the creepy armor and weapons, the way the Yamosks look. It's just done well in the comic.
Hmm.
So if I would recommend, if you ever get those comics, there's releasing a trade paperback with them. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, this epic, Legends collection or whatever. If you ever get those, I would just, even if you don't read it, just go through the pictures just to get the like, yeah, this is kind of how I imagined it.
And one of the smart things they did was they didn't show all of the Vong's power, all of the Vong's strength, or all of the Vong's numbers in this book. This book is very much like a prologue, a taste. You're just seeing the beginning of what they can do in this book. And I mean, yes, they kind of destroy some kind of planet type stuff, but like you see the beginning of what their power is, and you see the threat that it creates. And
yeah, I mean,
enough.
it took them a matter of days to completely transform. And I know what you're going to say, Net. Comics, they don't have as good, but trust me, these ones, they get it right. I haven't read Vector Prime since I'm reading through the Clone Wars Multimedia Project, but since I'm running errands and would like to listen to something on here. Okay, I'm
Thank
good.
you
If you don't mind spoilers, we're good. But yeah, like within a few days, they completely terraformed a planet to suit their environmental needs.
Yep.
And that is terrifying. And this isn't even the full Vong force. This is the advance, the scout, the vanguard that's supposed to pave the way for when the true invasion hits.
Yep.
And it's scary. It really is. It's just, and it's real.
Mm-hmm.
And then, okay, so and now we have to get to the noble death and what they do with Cern Pidal. And one honorable mention I have to talk about: the mayor of the town in Cern Pidal.
Mm-hmm.
What a Chad!
Yeah,
I gotta give him props for going down with the ship.
Yep.
And by that I mean he jumped into the moon with a thermal detonator to kill the creature. He's like, well, we can't stop my planet from dying, but we can prevent anybody else from dying too.
Right. Yep.
So, talking about Chewie's noble death, and despite what anybody tells you, it is noble.
Yeah.
It is absolutely a noble death, the way it goes down. And like I said, that I told you in the previous area, before the stream started, that theme from Rogue One, where they're in the shaft and trying to get the Death Star plans, Cassian and Jyn, was going through my head when the planet's falling apart, when the moon is getting closer, when Anakin and Chewie are trying to get refugees, and Han is screaming, "Come on the ship!" Wait, what? A certain Wookiee dies? I can't believe it. I've heard this on my Wikipedia search in 2012.
Right.
But
I will take a pause and say my favorite story about someone finding out Chewie's death was someone, Delilah Dawson, who writes for the Star Wars canon. She was reading the books as they were coming out, and she reads on a treadmill when she runs. So she was reading on the treadmill, and she got to the point where Chewie dies, and she dropped the book and she zipped off the treadmill because she was so shocked by that. And I was like, okay, yeah, she probably got hurt, but man, that's an awesome story.
That is cool. I can't wait to check out some of her books when I start getting further into some of the canon stuff while I'm going through the what's left of the EU.
Yes, but, and that's right. It takes a whole moon to take out Chewbacca.
Yes.
That was the right move on Salvatore, because his directive was just to kill Chewie. How he did it was up to him, and so he said, "Yeah, if I'm going to kill Chewie, I want to make it a darn moon that has to kill him."
I love the events of how it all happens too. Like Anakin gets knocked out, and Chewie's trying to reach up to Han, but he can't get close enough. So Chewie just kind of sighs, and he realizes, "Yeah, I'm probably not going to make it out, but I can save my best friend's kid." And he tosses Anakin up, and then the ground collapses. Han's like, "Get us closer!" He wakes up Anakin, get us closer, and things are falling apart. And Chewie, I think at that point, wasn't even reaching up for him because he knew that's not how it was going to go. And Han sees when Anakin realizes, like, there's no way I can get the ship steady, and I gotta get Dad and the rest of these people out of here. The moon is right there. He takes off, and there's no anger in Chewie's face. You can tell, at least not until he sees the moon coming, and he raises his fists as if to tell the moon, "Come at me, come and get me." And I don't know if you ever heard of this anime, but like he dies like a Dragon Ball Z character dies with a
Yeah,
straight like white light that consumes the bones and the flesh, and you can kind of get.
I can
And
picture it perfectly.
believe it or not, I was just doing some work while that was happening, and the whole time my heart is racing, not because I'm
Mhm.
doing work, but because I'm listening to this horrible thing that's happening. That
Right,
Anakin has to reluctantly leave Chewie behind to
right,
save his dad and all these refugees that got aboard the Falcon, and Chewie just defiantly roaring at the moon, "Come
right.
get me!"
Hmm.
And then the thing that hit me afterward, like right after I started going further into the book, the thing that hit me afterwards was Han. And I got a little mad at Han because he did this.
Hmm.
More than a little, I was angry at Han. I'm like, how can you treat your son this way?
Well, this is where it gets interesting. So, from a production perspective, the reason that the New Jedi Order was created the way it was when they were switching over to the new publisher and Lucasfilm together said, "We want to change the formula. We want
Right.
to throw everyone on their back foot." One of the things is we've done a bunch of trilogies, and then we've done like 4-book series or stuff like that with like the X-wing stuff. They
Yeah.
said, let's do a huge series that's like more than just a trilogy or something. So that was the first thing. The second thing was, let's create this otherworldly threat, that being the Vong. The third
Yeah.
thing was, they said, we need to prove that not just a B or C character can die, but that an A tier character. So they went through and they said, who are the characters available? Who could we kill? And the first thing they asked was, they asked Lucas, who are we allowed to kill? And he said to them, kill who you want. It doesn't matter to me. And so the first they had to.
I might have to question that
That's just
because
coming from Stackpole, because
yeah.
at Stackpole said in the panel, he said they asked him and he gave them, carte blanche, kill who you want. And so they went through each of the characters and said, who do we want to look at? And they said, we want all the other characters to react. The one character they felt that the authors wouldn't be able to react would be Chewie. But so they said all the other characters can react to his death, but he couldn't react to anyone else's death.
Okay.
Other than like R2D2, but like that you could put him back together or something. So that's why they ended up choosing Chewbacca. They had the ability to choose someone else, but he was chosen because of the reaction. And again, as you were saying, with Han's reaction to Anakin, with the having to leave Chewbacca behind, and it's heartbreaking, and it's so you feel like Han's being too harsh on him, but that's an intense reaction, and that's almost the reaction the fan base had, kind of a little bit.
Yeah.
And so that's why choosing Chewbacca as the person to kill was actually a really smart move.
No, I agree, and no offense to Stackpole, but I heard this while Stackpole was in the room at Legends Con in 2023, with Randy Stradley explaining it. He said he heard from Lucy Wilson from George saying the commandment was, "Thou shalt not kill Luke."
That was not what he said, and at the panel that I listened to. So maybe he just didn't want to.
Maybe because the one they had us in, they said we didn't want any recording devices at the time. It was a private.
Interesting.
So spoilers there. Yeah, Lucas said you can't. And one of the concepts that they brought up was the concept of killing Han, but nobody liked that. So Randy Stradley suggested killing the family dog.
Interesting.
He was and it's even in the Essential Reader's Companion that Randy Stradley was the one that suggested the death of Chewbacca.
Which is interesting because he's not even an editor for Del Rey. He was just doing the comics at the time.
Well, here's the interesting thing. NJO was originally supposed to be a comic series, but they decided to turn it into a novel series. They shifted over to Del Rey.
Thank goodness, because I think it works really well as a novel series.
Well, I agree, and I'm only starting it. But judging by how the comics were happening, which, by the way, I asked Randy Stradley at Legends Con, like, were you involved in this? Because these comics were not the best. And I was honest with him about it. And he's like, yeah, no, this wasn't me. This was Mike Richardson by this point. I had already kind of checked out.
Interesting.
Yeah, like you can kind of tell which stuff is his by the way he described, because like he was involved with the first and second Crimson Empire comic, but the third one was all Mike Richardson. His involvement was like non-existent, which is why the third one was just kind of mid to me. Like I really enjoyed the first and the second one. Second one not as much as the first, but I still really enjoyed it because I thought the writing was still pretty good for a comic. But with the third one, it had like been so many years and it just completely lost the plot at that point because it kind of pulls a plot just out of its keister with like just some random Imperials planning, and they want what's his name, Kirkanos, to help lead them through this time. And he's like, no, I'm not doing that. No. So yeah, to be with, I was giving you crap about the comics thing. I wasn't actually intending to be. I know, Net. I know. That's why I was playing along with it. But yeah, no, it was originally supposed to start as a comic series, but they eventually decided to shift over to novels, which I agree probably was better in the long run because the comics they came up with afterwards that tied into NJO, I'm sorry, stinkers. They're visually they're cool. Like they show off the war and the horrors of it pretty well, but story wise, it just feels kind of forced.
Yeah.
There's even like the main character even almost has like a little romance with Jaina.
Oh, who's the main character?
Finn Galfridian. If you've never heard of him, that's because he was created after NJO. And he
you will learn that Jaina has a love interest with someone else in this series.
Oh, I know. I already know. I already know.
Although I am still, this is, getting into something later, but I am still bitter that she ends up with who she ends up instead of Zek. It should have been Zek, and I know that like not everyone agrees with me on this.
I felt the same with Luke and Callista, but that's
yeah, no,
I'm
I think that's even more of a hot take than mine.
To be honest with you, because I know it goes down in Fate of the Jedi.
Right.
I kind of wish that after Mara passed, that Luke had gotten back together with her, and that they had started like this whole thing of like, like maybe Callista tells Ben, like, I'm not trying to take your mom's place. I'm just trying to be here for your father.
That would have been an interesting perspective.
I would have loved that too. Yeah.
I will say Callista makes an appearance, kind of.
I know about her fate in Fate of the Jedi.
Okay, so
but yeah, I know all about that. But yeah, basically, I think, anyway, that's my. But yeah, I feel like the death of Chewie was done really well, and then Han's reaction. I still can't believe he said that to his, and he didn't just say it to his son once. He said it 3 times. Yeah. You left him.
Right.
And it hurt Anakin every time. And even after that, Han showed him like just unnecessary cruelty. Like, you should be comforting your son. Like, what? It was a moment where it's like, what kind of father are you?
Well, yeah, you see, because like Han had been with Han had been with Chewie for so long. And like they obviously Han loves Leia as his wife, but like Chewie is like his friend and like business partner, and Chewie is
he's known him for years. I know.
Yeah, he is the close. And the difference that Randy Stradley made the dog analogy. The difference between like a dog has a very short lifespan. So even if you really get connected to your dog, it's a very small part of your life. Whereas Chewie had been with Han at this point for I think like 30 years. Maybe 25 years.
Roughly 30, because he met him.
Yeah.
He met him years ago, saved him from slavery.
Yeah, and so like they have just this deep bond. And I mean, even Han's children, who he loves, his children he's only been with for what, like 10, 12, 15, 16 years at this point. So even his children, he hasn't developed, and he's not with his children all the time either. Like his children are often at the course or at the base on Yavin, and his children are often separated from him. He's going off and doing his own thing. I mean, sometimes they're together, but the point is that he is like an extension of his arm. Is Chewbacca. And so you understand that grief that he goes through.
No, I do understand it, but at the same time, I'm not a fan of like, I in the book, I wanted Leia to ask him what happened, which she did, but she didn't pry. I
Mhm.
wanted her to find out about what happened between him and Anakin, and I wanted Leia to slap him, like
Uh,
just.
the slap doesn't happen, but the prying does. His connection with Anakin is addressed later on. So
Oh, I'm guessing it is, but
yeah,
that's like I wanted her to. That's your son. I wanted her to just slap him across the face, a good one. Finn's story was just getting interesting when Invasion happened. Yeah, I got to reread the third volume in between Dark Tide, and I'm not interested in the slightest. PTSD is a hell of a thing. Whoa, what do you got against Mara? I don't have
oh, don't
anything
get him
against
started.
Mara.
Don't get him started.
I'm not going to get started on that.
I love Mara, but it's me.
I
But
love no, I love her too. It's just
you just don't like
y-
her in the duology.
no. I like her in the duology. I just don't think she has the right to call out Luke. Uh, okay, see, you know the biblical analogy when you want to take a speck out of somebody else's eye, but you got a big
Right.
plank in yours.
Yeah.
Mara has a huge plank in hers,
Right.
and she does. She has the gall to tell Luke, "Get the speck out of your eye."
Mhm. Well,
That's.
I was okay. I know this isn't Vector Prime, but I want to take this tangent because I love talking about this. And in our Twitter spaces, you and I have talked about this, but for the audience, I want to take a second to say I particularly love their dynamic in the Hand of Thrawn duology because it reminds me of another biblical thing with the story of Hosea and Gomer, where in the Bible,
Yeah,
Hosea
yeah.
is
I've been reading a Bible manga, and it reminded that story, so I know what you're talking
and
about.
right.
It's sort of a
So
faithfulness thing, and I actually applaud Luke for having like the sense and kindness to kind of take her abuse. Gariel Captison is where it's at. Yeah, you know what, Gariel? I wasn't big on her in Truce at Bakura,
mhm,
but I got a little around to her during the Black Fleet Crisis. I actually really liked her there. I thought she
mhm.
was done. But then again, I like the Black Fleet Crisis in general. I think those are really good books.
Uh,
And Jonathan is saying nothing.
that is a whole other tangent.
Yeah, I'm not gonna bother pushing on that.
Yeah. But what I was gonna say really quick to finish my thoughts on that was that the Hosea and Gomer story is about Hosea feeling commanded to go after Gomer when she leaves him. Like she had married him, had kids with him. She leaves to go back to her previous life, which was not a good one, and he feels
Yeah, I know.
commanded to continue to pursue her. And even when she doesn't, like, she kind of argues with him, and she's not really siding with him. He continues to feel called to pursue her, and Luke in the duology is trying to pursue to help Mara, and Mara's kind of being hypocritical, and Mara's doing all this bad stuff. But Luke feels, I need to go after Mara because I need to go after her because it's the right thing to do. And I think he doesn't know how to identify that he's kind of in love with her, but he has that going in there with it. And so I loved that element of Zahn's storytelling where I didn't like what Mara was doing to Luke in that story, but I liked what it resulted in because it kind of
Oh
produced
yeah, no,
that
I
biblical
like the end
analogy.
results too. Oh, I just don't think their chemistry in that particular book is very strong. That's
Oh
just
no,
me
it's
though.
not. It's not meant to. It's meant to be kind of rough.
That's well, again, that was kind of my problem with it. That
Right.
like I see the romance between Luke and Callista. Heck, I thought like stuff in like even some of the romances in the X-wing books, like they work in my opinion. And
Yeah.
I still hope I get to see Michael Stackpole again at like Legends Expo, so I can talk to him more about Asir Sylar and why you put that romance on taboo between her and Gavin. But whatever.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'll get to my next point now. Mara versus Yeoman Carr.
Yeah.
I thought that the fight was really well done, but that's just I don't know if you have like a counterpoint to it. I really liked the way it kind of went, where she was like just kind of like she couldn't sense him. She was kind of stuck because of that goo he threw, and every time she cut at it, it just sank more, or it just like broke up more and kept sticking her, and she's struggling. And I did think it was a really clever move, by the way, when the amphi-staff shot venom into her, and then she used the force to push the blood out, so that it would. I thought that was like, oh yeah, that's a clever move to get poison out of your system.
Yeah, I'll be honest. That fight didn't leave much from memory. I remember that they did fight, and that's about it. Like the details of it totally escaped
I remember
me.
some of the details, like at some point, like Yeoman Carr actually like jumps on her arms or something like that, and she has to like kind of like push him off, sort of. But he's like heavy. It's weird because again, Vong muscular, heavy. It makes sense why he would be heavy. So Jonathan Cohen is teamed up Luke and Mara. Nazo is team Luke and Callista. Interesting, most interesting. Han blaming Anakin response to Anakin was a classic grief reaction. Han wasn't capable of rational lashing out of grief, looking for the only target to lash out. Oh yeah, no, I did notice Han's grief in that scene. Matter of fact, he started with the first stage of grief, which was denial, because he wanted to go back to Cern Pidal, but he had to go help Kip Duran, who was being attacked by those space bugs that were released by the Vong. But yeah, like I thought the fight was interesting, and I think that's kind of the moment where Mara realized this disease has really hit me, because under normal circumstances, even not using the Force, I would have mopped the floor with a guy like this.
Yep.
But she struggles big time against this target, and she realizes that the proximity to the planet, because she has the Vong spores in her, is making her weaker and killing her at the same time. So she's like, Luke, get me off this planet. Get me off this planet right now. And so they get off and get going. But yeah, that was so yeah, it's a quick little point about the Yeoman Car. Okay. Now something I can get to. Okay. And I read a little bit more of this in my Essential Guide to the Force. It was like a little recording from, by the way, from Jaina's perspective about the battle meld. And it actually harkens back to because I know it even when I started going through Dark Tide, I noticed the change in Anakin instantly. But after that battle meld where they were like so focused, working together, flying together, there was a change in Jason and Anakin in particular, where both Anakin was like, maybe my brother's onto something, and Jason had the same thought. He's like, maybe he's onto something. It was like that kind of symbiotic of thinking and acting.
Yeah.
And I also thought it was interesting that they actually ended up finding out that that's how the Yamask was directing people. It's like a parallel for Han and Leia, bad boy, good girl ship dynamic. This isn't an offense, but I feel like people that like Luke and Mara are the people that like the good guy, the bad girls. Okay, yeah, I see what you're talking about. Yeah, that makes sense. And I've made this joke multiple times to friends. It's like, if Ben ever asks his dad, "How'd you meet Mom?" "She tried to kill me." You have to word it like that.
Right.
She tried to kill me.
He has a smile when he say it and wink.
Yeah.
And Mara be like, "You're gonna make it sound." She's gonna be like, "You're gonna make it sound way different than it actually was."
She just frowns at him and then maybe like tells him, "You want me to succeed?"
Right.
No. I'll shut up, honey. Don't worry.
Right. I can see that playing out.
Yeah, like I thought the battle meld was interesting, like a rediscovered Jedi technique that nobody had used in quite. It was kind of like a natural transformation or evolution or growth of battle meditation.
Right. Yeah. I did remember that, and I feel like the EU had done a smart job, yes, even back in the times of the original Thrawn trilogy, of kind of laying inadvertently the seeds for this, where battle meditation is not something we see in the movies necessarily, but it had been at least a little bit in the books. So when you get to this point and this new kind of force ability is introduced, there's been so many similar that have kind of been introduced ahead of it, that it felt like a natural progression. And so it didn't feel despite it being kind of introduced here, it didn't feel out of place. As opposed to other Force abilities later on that will get introduced that I'm like, really? Is that really? In Legacy of the Force and Fate of the Jedi, there's a Force ability introduced. And I'm like, really? Is that?
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because I've heard about this, and people are like, how is that all that different from the World of Worlds in
World Between Worlds, yeah.
World Between Worlds in the
flow
current
walking
canon
is what I'm referencing,
which it is different, but at the same time, it's like it's like with World Between Worlds, you're peeking into the past, and you have the possibility of changing the past. Whereas with what was it called, Fade Walking or something like that?
Yeah.
You just watch the past.
The white one is.
Yeah. You watch visions of the past. You can't actually affect it.
And Andres asks, is there not a short story where Luke explains to Ben how he met Mara? I would absolutely pay for that. I don't believe that exists.
Not that I'm aware of. I'm
not aware.
Like, I have the Essential Reader's Companion that like holds a whole bunch of novels and short stories and all that. And anyway, in that one,
it's in the box.
Hold on one sec.
So airplane food, everyone, am I right? How terrible. No. That's going to be my go-to joke anytime that I have to...
Sorry about that. No, they had family getting medicine over here. But no, but what as far as I'm aware, there isn't like a how Mara met Luke story. There's a funny little comic in one of the volumes where Han and Leia tell Anakin a story about Luke's hand and the adventures it went on, like how it met Darth Vader's hand and fought with it, and the big villain at the end was the Emperor's foot. And
that sounds very much like something that Lego would try to do in one of their spin-off shows. Or something.
Yeah, like one of the was it the Build the Bricks? Yeah, Freemaker. That's what. But yeah, like it was just like one of these funny little comics from Star Wars Tales, and Tales is a mixed bag.
Mm-hmm.
There's some that are good, some that are bad, some that are just okay. Well, you're like, oh, I read it. Okay,
right? Yeah.
All right, let me get to the next point. The loss of Belkadan. I'm not. Oh yeah. Okay. So if you remember, they do bring a fleet to Belkadan. That's like partially led. Like you have Kipteron leading the fighters, and then you have one Star Destroyer, and the captain is so sure that one Star Destroyer is going to be able to take out these Vong, and you have Jason and Jaina going down to the planet to go find Danny Kui and God, what was the name of? I can't remember the name, but it was Kipteron's Padawan. His name is escaping me. He like, other than his last stand, he wasn't really that memorable of a character to me, which is why. Yeah, he is kind of a red shirt, although he does have a nice heroic stand at the end. How do you even have an Essential Reader's Companion by default? I might have to pay an arm. I lucked out twice. Well, first I bought a copy. I have two copies, actually. At first I bought a copy when it was cheaper, and then I lucked out and bought like a used copy on eBay for like $50.
Wow.
So I was like, okay. Yeah. But in regards to what was my the Battle of Belkadan, and I forgot to get to Danny Kui. She's an okay character. And I can tell what Salvatore was trying to do, because there's like a moment between Jason and her where they're kind of barely clothed and there's some kind of tension there. And I'm like, that's kind of iffy to me, considering Jason is like 16 and she's what, like 22, 23?
Right, yeah.
So I'm like, that's kind of iffy.
And we all kind of knew they couldn't do that, or couldn't make that go anywhere, because we all knew Jason is for Tunnel Ka. Like, we all knew.
Yeah. By the way, is Tenel Ka in New Jedi Order? Because I'm a little worried that she isn't.
Yes, not as much as I would wish. She is absolutely in Legacy of the Force.
I know that.
She's in New Jedi
She's
Order.
on one of the covers.
Yeah, she's in New Jedi Order, just not that much. She and Lobaka sadly were relegated to, and they were over there doing this thing. We can't read about that. We have to stay with the A group.
Just like Kyle Katarn.
Right. And it's kind of like a Zach.
Except he at least got a short comic.
Yeah. And it was kind of, I kind of feel that had they included Zach a little bit, back to my previous point, a little bit more, if they had included him more, maybe they wouldn't have been jumped absolutely to putting Jaina with someone else. I feel like because maybe they didn't forget, but he wasn't at the forefront of everyone's minds when they were trying to find a love interest for Jaina later. And so I feel like if they had just included Zach in other stuff, maybe they wouldn't have made that decision.
I do remember a bit about the 90s, just a little bit, or at least the early 2000s. And I remember seeing some people, or like maybe from old Star Wars magazines or something like that, or even just fans in general, that criticize Young Jedi Knight books. And I'm like, why? They're great.
I know.
And I that's something I never really understood. This is funny. Brennan, Quinlan Voss, and Matt Wilkins are also Team Zach.
Hey!
Oh yeah. No, I kind of. By the way, I'm kind of a bit Team Zach myself, considering I disagree with his becoming a Jedi, but I understand why they went that route. I'd rather prefer he stayed like a Force-sensitive bounty hunter. But again, that's a difference of opinion. But I am glad that the way he worked out, and I felt like he was a good balancing point for Anji Galandro in that book series. So yeah, Battle of Belkadon and
yes, get it back there.
A Star Destroyer is just being decimated by this Yamask hive mind handled battle force of Yuuzhan Vong, and that's something you don't see often.
Yep.
That actually shows the scale, and believe it or not, it reminded me when I was going through the book. It reminded me of a quote from the trailer that Mark Hamill did. I don't know if you've seen the trailer before for Vector Prime.
No, I haven't.
There's a trailer. It has like just mostly like stock footage.
Yeah.
And in it, Mark Hamill narrates. He's like, "I had fought the worst of all wars and seen the redemption of evil. I'd seen balance restored to the Force. But order can turn to chaos as it did when I was born. Now, with my loved ones and my loyal allies, I face a new challenge unlike any before." And he says this line, "And I'm not sure if this time we can win."
Mm-hmm.
And it's the way the book feels sometimes with all these losses. You kind of wonder, are they going to win this time?
Right.
Because as far as I'm aware, the book could have ended on a cliffhanger with the Vong still being a threat.
Yep.
And of course, they're going to get through it at the end, but like, I at that moment, like seeing the Star Destroyer decimated, they like the ships being forced to retreat, and like they're like, we're not leaving the kids, we're not leaving Jaina and Jason. We already lost Chewie today, we're not.
Mm-hmm.
You feel that sense of urgency and that sense of like, someone else could die today.
Yeah, and I think that was it was effective, but it was also
it really
good that
was.
They provide a little bit of closure, because if they had just ended it purely on a cliffhanger, I think that it would have had even worse reaction. Like it would have been even more harsh. Now it may have been more effective in terms of shocking people, but it might have made people a little bit more angry. Giving a little bit of closure at the end makes you kind of your heart rate. You need a denouement. Bring the heart rate down, make people feel okay. We've survived. We've made it through. We have a chance. Yes, this big threat is coming, and we've not only seen a part of it, but you feel like we escaped to live another day. And if we didn't have that escape to live another day, you would end with your heart rate elevated, and that would just be a little bit much for the first book in a series. Maybe It will be more effective if they do it at a later book, which they do. But for the first book, it was good to bring the heart rate down.
Yeah, no, I am glad, and I felt like they wrapped it up pretty well. I'm not going to get into it yet because I want to talk about the weird, crazy shield ice plant. I I don't know. Maybe it felt like because I've never been a huge fan of technobabble,
Me neither.
and that's something that I think that's the one downside to this book is that they take this time to say like if we use like that. It's one of the times I'm actually thankful that Han translates it into normal speak.
Right. Yeah.
Where he's like, so if we freeze this area up, then we can kill the Yamusk or whatever. We can kill the big tentacle thing and defeat them, or at
Mhm.
least have a shot at beating them. We
And
needed
that's
much more Kyle Katarn in the novels. Yes, absolutely.
and that thing about technobabble, it's very much you can tell when an author is confident or not because they will often lean on the technobabble to try to feel like I'm a little bit nervous about what I'm writing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce a lot of technobabble to prove to you that I'm doing Star Wars stuff and I'm making it complex. I'm going to prove that, and so they'll kind of lean on that, and we're kind of the rest of us like the ones who you can tell the authors who are confident are like, we don't need the technobabble. We know what we're doing.
Yeah,
We'll
I mean,
write the
even
minimum.
Stackpole and Zahn, like they use technobabble, but it's like
Minimal.
technobabble that makes sense.
Yeah.
And you can the reader can even understand what they mean by the technobabble. With this one, it's like if we position the sun at just the right angle with the shield ship, it'll create a lens glare that will heat up the surface and melt the ice and make it colder. And I'm like, can you please just simplify it?
Right.
Please, simple. It's the KISS philosophy. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yep. I agree. I agree.
But yeah, that part, that crazy plan, and obviously it works out in the end because it's supposed to work out in the end.
Mm-hmm.
And one aspect I did like about the book at that last moment, because like Jaina almost crashes on the planet again, and
Yep.
Luke almost crashes on the planet, and Han is reluctant because he might have to leave Luke behind to die,
Mm-hmm.
and so like he feels the same thing, Anakin, and like it did bother me that he never apologized to Anakin. I'm sure that'll get resolved in later books, but
Kind of.
kind of. I noticed the way you say kind of.
Yes.
And so one prospect that brought up was Han's bubble,
Mm-hmm.
and it was almost kind of like an in memoriam to the Bantam era.
Yeah.
Because he's like, I'd always kind of, put this bubble around me, you, Luke, Mara, the kids, Chewie, not even the droids,
Right.
and nothing could hurt us, nothing could
Exactly.
get us.
They're the A team.
Yeah, but like the death of Chewie was the burst of the bubble.
Yep.
It was the time and to quote a quote, I've heard Matt Wilkins quote before and again, it was at the time. If you want a safe book, read Star Trek, which I know nowadays Star Trek is a bit more, darker and willing to do riskier things, but that was
Well, I would say that in the 90s, certainly Star Trek was absolutely safe. You were not allowed to do anything. You were not allowed to kill characters unless they were original characters. You were not allowed to do anything crazy. Now, in 2002 or 2001, 2001-ish, Star Trek started their own like post Return of the Jedi type thing with their post Nemesis series, and so they did get more big and epic and blowing up planets and killing off your favorite characters and stuff. In fact, they took a lot of notes from Star Wars for the Star Trek
maybe
series.
they took Stackpole's quote to heart, like,
They
hey,
did.
we need to get dark too.
Right? Yeah, they did. And in fact, they said when they saw what happened with the cutoff with the EU, they said, "Hey, we need to cut off our own series ourselves so it doesn't end abruptly." They're like, we need to provide our own official end. So they did learn from stuff that the EU did. But so yeah, in the 90s, absolutely, Star Trek was very safe. They didn't kill anyone. So yeah,
And
that
well,
quote
for the
fits
most
that.
part, the unless it was original characters, the Bantam-era did
Bantam-era.
that.
Absolutely.
The most riskiest character death I remember from the Bantam-era was Crix Madine
Yep.
in
Madine.
Was it the Corellian or the Black Fleet Crisis? I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah,
But
it's one of those two.
they were bold enough to actually kill him off because he's like, oh, maybe my friends will get here in time, even though he had already kind of resigned himself to death. And then he dies.
Yeah.
And he doesn't get to see the big victory fleet that defeats the enemy. Oh, no, wait. It was Darksaber. That's what it was.
Oh, it's been a while. It's been a long time since I've read all those.
Oh, I know. I was just trying to remember, like, which one was it for like a split second.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, Chewie was like the step that pretty much showed fans, hey, this is not the safe galaxy far, far away you knew from years ago. We're not just killing off some B-list character from the movie. We're killing off someone major.
And they have follow through. That was what also makes it. I mean, you haven't gotten there, but you know who I'm talking about. There is follow through in this series and in subsequent series, and they proved that this was not an anomaly. They also proved this is obviously not Salvatore's doing. They was, oh, you're crying at Chewie's death. You ain't got nothing.
Wait
yet.
Until this happens.
Wait until this happens. All I'll say is. If you haven't read these star by star, whoo boy.
I'm getting there. There. Believe me, I'll get there. But like the only as far as I remember, when it came to the Bantam-era, the only like really risky author, in my opinion, was Aaron Alston, because he introduced you to these characters and then kills off like half of them in his books.
Yeah. And he was also risky in terms of style because he had a very fun, goofy style that didn't really match the others. And I like his style, but he was
Same.
very much the risk taker of the Bantam-era.
Yeah, and again, if I ever get to meet Stackpole again, that's one I want to ask him what Aaron Alston was like.
Yeah,
that's because before I had just done the abridged audiobooks, and I really liked Stackpole's, but I only was just kind of okay with Alston's. Now after going through like the full ones, I'm like, they're in a degree I kind of like Alston more because he's riskier, because he's willing to jump that theoretical shark, I guess.
Yeah.
And yeah, like that's kind of what this book did, is that it took a lot of risks, and this could have completely backfired and shot Del Rey in the face. They could have lost the license to Star Wars just from this alone, because the bad press would have. And it's not like nowadays where like even bad press is good press.
Right.
Sadly.
Yeah. And it
this
was
isn't
also
your daddy's
like
Star Wars.
They did have to take a second and say, there's gonna be a temporary blowback, but it's worth the wait. And it's one of those things where, yes, at the time, poor Salvatore kind of had to bear the brunt of the anger. But you think about now, like what it did was for a lot of people, when they think about like an era like this, the New Jedi Order era is the ultimate era of publishing for them, because of how huge the series was, how epic, how risk-taking, all those things, which would not have been possible if we had not had a book as risky as this. And so it's just, I'm just, one of those, back to earlier point, man, if only Stackpole had done it instead of Salvatore, given Salvatore 2 and 3.
Oh yeah, no. If Stackpole had done it, I guarantee you they would have taken a lot more risks.
But also they would, and they would not have had the flack from the fans.
No, because Salvatore would have gotten like the continuation trilogy or duology, and Salvatore would have gotten that, and Stackpole would have gotten the first book in the new era, and people probably would have been a bit more forgiving of it. Absolutely. Especially with people like Zahn or even Kevin backing him up. saying like, no, he's taking a risk, the type of risk that we couldn't take back in the day. They would have backed him up. They would have said, no, he's taking a risk.
I don't know what they said back then, if anything. I know that Kevin stopped talking about stuff for a little while and then came back. But I don't know what they would have said, what they did say back then.
Yeah, like I know. Again, I know how things are now, but back then there was kind of a bit of a rivalry, and like because again, Matt Wilkins talked to like Dave Wolverton, and he talked about how certain authors were a certain way, and to be fair, I don't think he's like that now, but I think back in those days, Tim Zahn, because he wrote such good Star Wars books, had a bit of that early author arrogance.
I don't know.
You know how it's I made the best books. My manure don't stink.
I just not from the interviews I've heard or done with him. But then again,
I think he's a different man now from back then. I think now he's probably humbler, more willing to like talk to fans, more respectful of fans, or even fans he might disagree with, or something like that. But I think
he's been willing to talk with fans the whole time. He's never
I know.
Like, not talked to fans. So
I know, but like let's say someone like that, like if you did this in the 90s, they said, oh, I really liked how well your story worked with Tom Veitch, Tom Veitch's Dark Empire. According to what Matt Wilkins described, he's like, he would have like just said, oh no, my stuff's not connected with that at all. Like that's how. Because again, like it's, I think, and again, some authors get this. I'm not saying like that this was Timothy Zahn 24/7, but some authors kind of like they kind of act like their manure don't stink, because they wrote like really good books.
Yeah,
like that. I hate to bring up a current canon author in in any sort of negative light, but like Chuck Wendig, for example.
He loves picking fights. He's definitely
he does. But like the first thing he thought, I wrote a Star Wars book in 30 days. My first thought was, great. Is it any good?
I thought so. I loved it, but I know everyone else didn't.
I'll see when I get there. I'll probably get there either around the time of like either Dark Nest or Legacy of the Force. But I'll see whether his book is good or meh or eh. At least as far as I'm concerned. I'm way behind on the stream, but would like to plug Luke and Jem yet again. Yeah, I kind of like Luke and Jem. That's from Dark Empire. Luke had a little romance with one of the characters there, but she dies. No surprise.
What? That never happens in the EU.
I heard Zahn hated Dark Empire and that didn't care for YJK, which contradicts Hand of Thrawn duology. I kind of look at it, again, if you read it the way Jonathan described, read it in publication order, it'll make more sense. But the way I looked at it, because in Young Jedi Knights you have the Second Imperium that like Pelion just completely disowned that group because he... Yep. And to me, it made more sense because they had just gone through the fake Thrawn thing. They're like, "Oh, this Palpatine thing is obviously fake."
Right, exactly.
Yeah, the real Empire, the real Imperial Remnant, saw right through the ruse, and they're like, "Yeah, no, nah."
Right, it fit to me. I thought.
Yeah, no, I agree there, and it's because I didn't think it contradicted any, and I didn't see many of the moments you were talking about with like Mara implied being there, except maybe like in the last couple books.
Right. It's not like he was very clever. Kevin and Rebecca, they didn't even make it like multiple lines. It was just they would be like, and a few other Jedi were present, including Mara or something like that. And it would just be really they just wanted to ensure that people knew she's there with Luke, but they just couldn't outright say, and she goes off with Luke to do something. Like they had to be they were very
Luke went off
careful.
with this particular female redheaded Jedi
right. They were
another room.
They were
to discuss
so
things in private.
they talked about how Kevin and Rebecca talked about how they had to be like so forensic in the way that they would choose lines so that they wouldn't get in trouble or that they could sneak it past, to make sure that
Yeah, no,
they knew.
because
Luke was
again, even like an old magazine that had like an article from Pablo Hidalgo is like, we wanted to kind of keep it under wraps that Luke and Mara were going to end up together.
right.
So that's why you don't hear Mara really mentioned or said or spoken about all that much in Young Jedi Knights.
And
Because
also, it took a while to get approval for it because
yeah.
at Celebration he talked about how he had 2 wishes: to end the Imperial, the Civil War, and to have them end up together. And they said nope on the end up together, but yes on ending the Civil War. And he jumped back and said, if I can't have them end up together, I'm not writing it. And at this time was when, as the contract negotiation was when. The Young Jedi Knights is coming out, so they were like, okay, we can't officially say it, but and then eventually they relented and let him.
Yeah, which I thought was good. And
yeah, that's
again,
what we were talking about, Andres. It's not the Empire that's in it; it's the Second Imperium.
That's how I look at it. That's how I look at it. I kind of, and by the way, I've seen a lot more parallels between the First Order and the Second Imperium than I have with the First Order and like the later Empire or something.
Right. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, it's just me, but I saw like a lot more parallels in that particular thing. And for anybody who's curious, like, I don't dislike Mara Jade. I just don't think that the romance writing in that particular duology is very good. However, upon doing Survivor's Quests, I'm like, even though I'm not a big fan of how their romance started, I like how their romance is because it's very well balanced. Luke got more snippy, like sarcastic, funny, snippy, and he's messing with Mara, and Mara is just kind of like, okay, yeah, you're right, okay.
Yeah.
And I think the romance works, and that's why I'm like, I'm still behind it. When going through NJO, I feel like, and I can still see good seeds of it even going into Darktide, which I want to dive back into Darktide now. I'm like, I gotta wait till I get back to work on Monday, but I want to dive into it more because
I personally like Darktide better than Vector Prime. I think as a duology, it's even better. So
well, I'm wondering if I should just do 1 stream or 2 when I do Darktide.
Oh, just do 1. It's
just put both together and just do 1.
That's how I would do all of the like duologies and stuff. Maybe, I mean, even for the trilogy at the end, the Force Heretic, I mean, you could do individual streams for it. I would do like a stream for 1 and 2 and then a stream for 3. But for all the
I was thinking of splitting Force Heretic into 3 into 2.
Yeah, but for the duologies, definitely just do 1 for, because they're short and they works better to do because you can talk about what worked in one book, what didn't work, things like that.
I can't wait to talk about Star by Star with you when I finally get there because it's going to be insane.
We need to get Alex and maybe even Caleb on that one. We need to schedule that.
Oh my, yeah! If you could,
that's their favorite.
I want to figure out the day we could actually do it.
Yes.
That's because the only reason I did this Saturday is because I said I was going to do it on Saturday, and typically on Saturday most people have it off, but not a lot of people had this Saturday off or had the time. So I'm like, I need to figure out the day where everybody's available. This includes like some of the other EU people I know, like Maxine and Marcel and Alex, if they want to pop on. Because I want to discuss these things with people. I want to talk about these things. This was kind of my first, and I honestly I really appreciate you coming on, Jonathan, and just chatting with me about, because it would be really boring if it was just me. Because all I would do is vent about something to the comments section and just go, "Oh yeah, I really didn't like that, but I can understand why other people did." But
absolutely, having a second person to bounce stuff off of is much
easier. And I do like a lot of your perspectives because they really make me think even if I'm kind of set in my perspective, I'm like, oh yeah, I do kind of see that point of view. Like you make me think about these things, so I'm like, okay, I'm not going to complain about it. And one thing I do want to talk about at some point when we get to them is the short stories that are connected to each sort of novel, including the ones you don't know about, because at some point, I don't know if you need to collect the magazines or if you just want me to send you the free digital novella. But I think you should check out the Greg Key's In Betweener, Emissary of the Void.
If they put it into a book, in a print, if they were to release, which I hope they would one day, just a collection of NJO, short stories, in traditional book format, I'd read it. Otherwise, I have 300 books on my shelves at the moment, plus the ones I want to buy. So probably won't happen for a while.
What I should do is I should try to print one on Lulu with like the novella and the other short stories that are only available in magazines, and then just send it to you, so you can like just get a reader's perspective on it.
Right, but that would not be as legal as I would hope it would be. So.
Well, part of the reason why people use Lulu and just print their own is because it's a lot harder to find certain books.
Oh, I know. Yeah, and I wish they would reprint stuff, but I mean, if it's not
legal, there's some stuff I would love to see. Again, I would love to see Lightsider have an official print. Right. I would love to see Heart of the Jedi have an official print. That's stuff that's approved by Lucasfilm, mind you. And I know Skywalker's was kind of given an official go ahead from Lucasfilm. But it's only available digitally unless you print it on Lulu. So, right. But that's one I think you would really enjoy because it manages to balance the original Marvel run with Dave Filoni's Clone Wars and the rest of the EU.
Mm-hmm.
It manages to combine all three canons into like a particular story, and it was just such a delight to go through, but get Matt Wilkins. I would love to get Matt Wilkins. I've only talked to him like I've popped up in his comment sections, but I've only talked to him like once on a stream on somebody else's YouTube channel right after the first Legends Con. And I would love to talk with him and pick his brain if he's got any thoughts that don't relate to his family, because when he's not reading, he's talking to his family or doing baseball or drinking soda or something like that. He's always got he's a big board game YouTube channeler, so he does reviews on board games. So
yeah,
beyond the typical Star Wars or Dune or some other book. But yeah, if you want someone who's clearly focused on books, I'm going to plug his channel, Jonathan Cohn. Please check out his YouTube channel. Even if you disagree with some of his points, you should still give him a shot because he is quite interesting with some of his descriptions.
And so thank you for that plug, and thank you for having me on. And someone asked earlier if I'll be back, and if you'll have me, I don't know if
I will absolutely have you.
Maybe I don't know if I can make it for all, each individual one, but certainly there are certain ones I absolutely want to make it back for. I'm thinking the Greg Key's duology I want to make it back for, and then Star by Star. And
you don't want to talk about Dark Tide?
Maybe I need to refresh on Dark Tide, but
okay.
Maybe, we'll see how this works in the schedule.
But again, I want to try to work my schedule to a good day where everybody can pop in and say their piece, and we can get like a full senatorial like discussion. Well, I think we should.
I'll take the position of nominor. I mean, Borsphalia. Sorry, Borsphalia. I'll be Borsphalia.
Can I be the angry little Sulliston?
Exactly.
Council meeting. Yeah, that's something I was waiting for. I still haven't seen in Dark Tide. Where is Luke's Jedi Council?
Dark Tide 2. If I'm remembering correctly.
Then I will look forward to that. I will definitely look forward to it. But who is he going to put on the council? That's the true question. But yeah, no, seriously, I really appreciate you coming on, Jonathan, for my first ever sort of YouTube Star Wars talk about live stream.
Absolutely.
And I am going to talk about other stuff because at some point I'd love to have friends on to talk about like other stuff like Berserk and Malazan and just to talk about some of my other favorite Mass Effect. And I would love. Oh, Arthur's here, bro. Streaming with Jonathan Cohn. Yeah, I know him from Twitter. I talk to him like all the time in the Awkward Silence gang. Should join the spaces sometime. It's really fun.
Yes.
And if you guys haven't already, you really should check out his YouTube channel. There's the third plug.
Thank you.
If you'd like, I'll probably come on in the future. I just need to remind myself using a synopsis. Oh yeah, I'd love to have you two on net. I know we've talked on some of your previous streams, and I would love to have Marcel on here because I know he's been busy with Legends Con and too, and how that might have eventually fallen apart, sadly. But like, I would love to have him on too.
Andres, I've not read it, but I have the first book on my shelves to be read.
Off topic, guys ever read? I've only seen the movie, and
I've heard the movie's not good, but I have the first book and intend to read it eventually.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Jonathan. It was great talking to you. I hope to have you at least it on the Great Keys and Star by Star if you're available, because that would be fantastic talking about. Oh, I need to tell you about this immediately because it's so awesome.
Absolutely. Loved it.
All right. Thank you again, Jonathan. And remember, that's Jonathan Cohn on YouTube.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, guys. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.